The massive bridge of the Earth Defense Fleet's flagship, Resilient, was eerily quiet. Only the soft beeping of monitoring equipment and the low hum of life support systems could be heard as Captain James Miller stared at the main view screen. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his knuckles had turned white from gripping the arms of his command chair too tightly. What he saw on that screen would have made most people panic. Thousands of alien ships surrounded Earth, their sleek forms blocking out the stars like a metallic cloud. Each one was at least twice the size of the Resilient, and their weapons made Earth's most advanced technology look like toys in comparison. "Report," Miller said, his voice steady despite the situation. The crew appreciated his calmness. It helped them stay focused. Dr. Emma Roberts, the ship's chief science officer, looked up from her console. Her usual excitement about new scientific discoveries was replaced by concern. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen. One of those ships could probably take out a small continent." Before Miller could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with the same message. "Attention humans of Earth. The stellar Concordat demands your immediate attention." Miller nodded to his communications officer, who opened the channel. The image that appeared on the main screen made several crew members gasp. The alien ambassador wasn't a solid being at all. It was a floating mass of pure energy that shifted and swirled like a living aurora. "I am Lightbearer, representative of the stellar Concordat," the being announced. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, translated perfectly into English. "We have been observing your species for some time, and we have reached a unanimous decision. You will surrender your independence and submit to Concordat rule within 48 Earth hours, or we will be forced to eliminate your species entirely." Miller stood up slowly, straightening his uniform. "That's quite a greeting, Ambassador Lightbearer. May I ask what we've done to deserve such an ultimatum?" The energy being pulsed with what might have been frustration. "Your species is an anomaly, Captain Miller. An aberration. A threat to the perfect order we have established across 12,000 star systems." "A threat?" Miller raised an eyebrow. "Our most advanced ships can barely reach Mars. Your fleet could destroy us without breaking a sweat. How exactly are we a threat?" "Your unpredictability," Lightbearer replied. "Your chaos. Your complete inability to follow logical patterns of development and behavior. Every other species we have encountered has followed predictable paths of technological and social evolution. But humans, the being's glow intensified. Humans create art before mastering basic resource management. You develop nuclear weapons before achieving unified global governance. You send primitive spacecraft to your moon using computers less powerful than a modern calculator, simply because you decided you wanted to." Miller couldn't help but smile slightly. "That's just how we are. We're curious. We experiment. We take risks." "Precisely the problem," Lightbearer declared. "The Concordat has spent 50,000 years perfecting the galaxy. Every member species follows the same logical progression of development. Resources are distributed efficiently. Conflicts are resolved through mathematical probability calculations. Progress is steady, measured, and most importantly, predictable." Dr. Roberts stepped forward, her scientific curiosity getting the better of her caution. "But surely diversity leads to stronger systems. In nature, monocultures are vulnerable to collapse." The energy being turned its attention to her, and the temperature on the bridge dropped several degrees. "Your Earth biology has no relevance here, Doctor. The Concordat system is perfect because it eliminates variables. Every species that joins us learns to embrace pure logic and order. Those who refuse..." Lightbearer's form darkened ominously. Miller walked to the front of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back as he studied the alien fleet. "And what happens to our culture? Our art? Our music? Our different ways of thinking? They will be corrected," Lightbearer stated simply. "Your children will be educated in proper Concordat methods of thought. Within 3 generations, humans will be productive members of our perfect society." The bridge crew watched as their captain absorbed this information, They knew him well enough to recognize the subtle signs of anger in his stance, the slight squaring of his shoulders, the small lift of his chin. "So let me make sure I understand correctly," Miller said carefully. "You're not here because we're a military threat. You're not here because we have resources you want. You're here because we don't think the way you want us to think." "Correct. Your species represents chaos in our ordered galaxy. You must be either controlled or eliminated. The choice is yours." Lightbearer's form expanded slightly. "You have 48 hours to submit your surrender. We will accept nothing less than total compliance." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence again. After a moment, Miller turned to his crew. "Dr. Roberts, analyze every bit of data we collected during that transmission. I want to know everything about their technology, their communications, anything you can figure out. Lieutenant Parker, get me a secure line to Earth Command. And someone get me some coffee. I have a feeling we're not going to get much sleep in the next 2 days." As the crew rushed to their tasks, Miller returned to his chair, his mind racing. The aliens had revealed something very important in their message, something they probably didn't even realize. They saw humanity's unpredictability as a weakness that needed to be corrected. But Miller had spent his entire career studying military history, and he knew better. The greatest victories in human history hadn't come from superior strength or technology. They had come from thinking differently, from doing the unexpected, from embracing chaos when the enemy expected order. He watched the alien ships on the screen, their perfect formations, their synchronized movements. Everything about them screamed of rigid thinking and inflexible protocols. A small smile crossed his face as an idea began to form. "Dr. Roberts," he called out, "when you're done with that analysis, I want to run something by you. It's going to sound completely crazy." She looked up from her work, recognizing the tone in his voice. It was the same tone he'd used when he proposed the impossible maneuver that had saved them during the asteroid belt incident last year. "The crazier the better, sir. It's what we humans do best." Miller nodded, his smile growing slightly. The Stellar Concordat thought they had humanity backed into a corner. They thought their perfect order would easily overcome Earth's chaos. They were about to learn a very important lesson about why humans had survived every challenge they'd ever faced. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe isn't the biggest gun or the most advanced technology. Sometimes, it's the ability to look at an impossible situation and think, what if we try something that makes absolutely no sense? The next 48 hours would prove that humanity's greatest weakness, our unpredictability, was actually our greatest strength. And the Concordat's perfect order was about to meet its match in human chaos. The emergency meeting room aboard the Resilient was packed with Earth's top military and scientific minds, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. Captain Miller stood at the front, watching as Dr. Roberts finished setting up her presentation. The clock on the wall showed they had 36 hours left before the Concordat's deadline. "What you're about to see," Dr. Roberts began, "is the most fascinating technological analysis I've ever conducted." She pressed a button, and the room filled with complex data streams from the alien fleet. The Concordat ships are incredibly advanced, but they have one major weakness. They're too perfect. General Thompson, the gruff head of Earth Defense, leaned forward. "Too perfect. How is that a weakness?" Roberts smiled, her eyes bright with discovery. "Their systems operate on pure logic and mathematical precision. There's no room for variation or adaptation. Watch this." She played a recording of the alien ships moving in formation. "See how they maintain exactly the same distance between each ship, down to the millimeter. Their movements are so precise that I can predict exactly where each ship will be at any given moment." Miller stepped forward. "And that's not all. Show them what you found in their communication patterns." The display changed to show streams of alien data. "Their communications are perfectly ordered," Roberts explained. "Every signal follows the exact same pattern. It's like they're all following the same script, with no room for improvisation. "That's all very interesting," Thompson growled, "but how does it help us? They still have enough firepower to turn Earth into space dust." Miller nodded to Roberts, who brought up a new display. "Because we found something even more interesting. Their weapons targeting systems are just as rigid. They calculate firing solutions using pure mathematics, assuming their targets will behave according to logical patterns. But humans don't behave logically," Miller added, a slight smile on his face. "We're unpredictable. We do things that make no sense, and their systems don't know how to handle that." The room burst into discussion as the implications sank in. Miller let them talk for a moment before raising his hand for silence. "Dr. Roberts has developed a plan. It's crazy, risky, and goes against every rule of conventional warfare. In other words, it's perfectly human." Roberts took over again, bringing up a simulation of Earth's defense fleet. "We're going to introduce chaos into their perfect order, not through superior firepower or technology, but through pure, irrational human behavior." The next hour was filled with questions and debate as Roberts and Miller explained their plan. Some of the military leaders thought it was insane. Others started to see the genius behind it. By the end, even General Thompson was nodding thoughtfully. "It's completely crazy," Thompson admitted, "but that's exactly why it might work. You have my authorization to proceed." As the meeting broke up, Miller and Roberts headed back to the bridge. "The hard part comes next," Miller said. "We have to convince our own crews to act completely irrationally while facing the most powerful fleet in the galaxy." Roberts laughed. "That's the beauty of it, Captain. When have humans ever needed convincing to act irrationally?" The next few hours were a flurry of activity as Earth's ships prepared for what Miller had dubbed Operation Chaos. Standard combat protocols were thrown out the window. Instead, ship captains were given a simple instruction: do the unexpected. Miller watched from the Resilience Bridge as the plan took shape. Earth's ships began moving in random patterns, breaking every rule of fleet formations. Some ships flew backward. Others spun in circles for no apparent reason. A few simply stopped dead in space, then suddenly accelerated in random directions. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're picking up increased chatter from the Concordat fleet. They seem confused." "Good," Miller smiled. "Dr. Roberts, how's the next phase coming?" Roberts didn't look up from her console, where complex calculations scrolled past. "Almost ready. The virus is beautiful in its ugliness, sir. It doesn't try to defeat their systems. It just makes them a little bit human." The virus was unlike anything ever created before. Instead of attacking the Concordat's computers, it simply introduced small elements of randomness into their perfect systems. A targeting computer might be off by a fraction of a degree. A navigation system might have a tiny delay. Nothing major, just enough imperfection to make their machines act more like humans. "Sir," the tactical officer's voice was urgent. "The Concordat ships are moving. They're adjusting their formation to match our patterns." Miller leaned forward, watching as the massive alien fleet tried to make sense of Earth's chaotic movements. Their perfect formation was starting to show signs of strain as their systems attempted to predict and counter the unpredictable. "They can't help themselves," Roberts explained, excitement in her voice. "Their systems are programmed to find patterns and respond accordingly. But we're not giving them any patterns to work with. It's like trying to solve an equation where the numbers keep randomly changing." The bridge crew watched in amazement as the mighty Concordat fleet began to show signs of disarray. Ships that had maintained perfect spacing for thousands of years were now moving erratically, their systems desperately trying to calculate responses to actions that defied calculation. "Sir," the communications officer spoke up again, "we're receiving a transmission from Lightbearer." Miller straightened his uniform. On screen, the energy being appeared, its usually smooth form now flickering with disturbance. "What are you doing?" Lightbearer demanded. "Your actions defy all tactical logic. Your ships are behaving irrationally." "We're being human," Miller replied simply. "This is what we do. We think outside the box. We color outside the lines. We look at the rules, and sometimes decide they don't apply. This is precisely why you must be controlled. Light bearers form, pulsed with agitation. Your chaos threatens everything we have built." Miller shook his head. "No, Ambassador. Our chaos is what makes us strong. Perfect order might work for your civilization, but humanity thrives on a balance of order and chaos. It's what drives our creativity, our innovation, our ability to adapt." As if to emphasize his point, several Concordat ships suddenly broke formation completely, their systems overwhelmed by the combination of unpredictable human movements and Robert's chaos-inducing virus. "You see," Miller continued, "the problem with perfect order is that it's brittle. It can't adapt. It can't handle the unexpected. But humans, we live for the unexpected. It's what we do best." Light bearer's form flickered again, and for the first time, there was something like uncertainty in its voice. This requires further analysis. We must consult." The transmission cut off, and the bridge erupted in cheers, but Miller raised his hand for quiet. "It's not over yet," he warned. "They're still powerful enough to destroy us. But we've shown them something they've never seen before, the power of human unpredictability." Roberts looked up from her console, her eyes shining with pride. "Sir, I think we've just proved that humanity's greatest weakness might actually be our greatest strength." Miller nodded, watching as the mighty Concordat fleet continued to struggle with the chaos they had introduced. Sometimes the best way to fight superior force wasn't with bigger weapons or better technology. Sometimes all you needed was the human ability to think differently, to embrace chaos, and to do what no one else would expect. The next 24 hours would determine whether humanity's gamble would pay off. But one thing was already clear. The perfect order of the stellar Concordat had met its match in human chaos, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be quite the same again. The space around Earth had turned into something that looked like a strange dance. Human ships moved in ways that made no sense, while the massive Concordat fleet tried desperately to maintain their perfect order. It was like watching a group of strict ballet dancers trying to respond to wild street performers. Miller stood on the bridge of the Resilient, watching as another group of Concordat ships broke their formation. Their virus was working better than they had hoped. The alien ships' perfect systems were struggling to handle even tiny amounts of randomness and human unpredictability. "Sir," Lieutenant Parker called from his station, "3 Concordat ships just crashed into each other trying to predict our movement patterns." Miller nodded, hiding his satisfaction. "Any serious damage?" "No, sir. Their shields prevented any real harm, but," Parker grinned, "they're definitely embarrassed. Their communications are full of what the computer translates as apologies and confusion." Dr. Roberts worked at her station, monitoring the effects of their chaos virus. "Captain, you need to see this," she called out. "The Concordat's main command ships are starting to show interesting behavior." Miller walked to her station, looking at the data streams on her screen. The information showed the alien fleet's command and control patterns, which usually moved in perfect, predictable ways. Now they looked messy and confused, like a neat handwriting turning into scribbles. "Their entire system is based on perfect order and predictability," Roberts explained. "When they can't predict what we'll do next, they can't decide what to do. It's like trying to play chess against someone who keeps changing the rules every few seconds." Suddenly, all the screens on the bridge lit up with another transmission from the Concordat. Lightbearer appeared, but the energy being's usual smooth form was now jagged and unstable. "Stop this immediately," Lightbearer demanded, its voice showing emotion for the first time. "Your actions are disrupting the harmony of our fleet. This behavior is illogical." Miller stepped forward, keeping his voice calm. "That's exactly the point, Ambassador. Humans don't always follow logic. Sometimes we follow our instincts, our feelings, or just our curiosity to see what happens if we try something new." "But why?" Lightbearer's form flickered with what might have been frustration. Your ships are moving without pattern. Your communications make no sense. Some of your vessels are broadcasting what our translators identify as human music. Ah, yes, Miller smiled. I believe that's the greatest hits of the 20th century playlist. One of our captains thought it might help your ships learn to dance. The energy being's glow pulsed rapidly. Dance? This is warfare. Combat follows strict rules and patterns. Does it? Miller asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like our chaos is doing pretty well against your perfect order. As if to prove his point, a group of Earth ships suddenly started moving in a conga line through space, complete with speed changes that matched the rhythm of the music they were broadcasting. The nearby Concordat ships tried to predict and match their movements, only to end up in a tangled mess. "Sir," Parker called out, trying not to laugh. Other Earth ships are joining the dance. The Concordat fleet is going crazy trying to figure out if this is some kind of advanced combat formation. The bridge crew tried to keep straight faces as they watched the mighty Concordat fleet, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, completely fall apart trying to deal with human silliness. Some alien ships were now moving in circles, others had frozen in place, and a few were making movements that looked suspiciously like they were trying to follow the music. This is impossible. Lightbearer's form was now changing colors rapidly. Our systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. They can calculate the movement of stars and predict the paths of comets centuries in advance. How can they not handle this? Miller walked closer to the screen. Because you designed your systems to be perfect, Ambassador. But the universe isn't perfect. It's messy, chaotic, and full of surprises. Humans learned to embrace that chaos long ago. It's how we survived as a species. Dr. Roberts added her own thoughts. Your technology is amazing, but it's also rigid. You're so focused on finding patterns that you don't know what to do when there aren't any patterns to find. More reports came in from around the fleet. The chaos virus had spread through the Concordat's network, introducing tiny random elements into their perfect systems. Ships that had operated flawlessly for centuries were now behaving like confused teenagers learning to drive. "Captain," Roberts called out, excitement in her voice. "The virus is having an unexpected effect. Some of the Concordat ships are starting to show signs of creativity." Miller raised an eyebrow. Creativity? How so? Their responses to our random movements are becoming less predictable. It's like they're learning to think outside their programming. A few ships are actually starting to move in ways that aren't in their standard protocols. Lightbearer's form suddenly stabilized, but in a completely new pattern. This is not possible. Our ships are beginning to act independently. They are improvising. The energy being's tone had changed. The anger was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like wonder. "That's what happens when you add a little chaos to perfect order," Miller explained. "You get creativity, innovation, new ways of thinking and doing things. It's not always neat and tidy, but it's how progress really happens." The bridge crew watched in amazement as more Concordat ships began to move in new and unexpected ways. Some were clearly copying Earth ships' random movements, while others were creating their own unique patterns. "Perhaps," Lightbearer said slowly, "we have made an error in our assessment of humanity. Your chaos is not just destruction of order. It is something else." Miller smiled. "It's called adaptation, Ambassador. It's how life survives and grows. Perfect order might look beautiful, but it's static. Real beauty comes from the dance between order and chaos." As the human fleet continued their strange space ballet, with more and more Concordat ships joining in, Miller couldn't help but feel proud. Humanity had faced the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, not with superior weapons or technology, but with something uniquely human: the ability to be unpredictable, creative, and just a little bit silly. The next few hours would determine whether this unusual strategy would lead to peace or conflict. But one thing was already clear. The stellar Concordat, would never be the same after encountering human chaos. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe wasn't perfect order, but the ability to break away from it and try something new. 12 hours remained until the Concordat's deadline, and the space around Earth had turned into something that no one had ever seen before. The perfect formations of the alien fleet had completely broken down. Instead, ships moved in strange patterns, some following the humans' chaotic dance, others creating their own unique movements. Dr. Roberts stared at her screens in amazement. "Captain, you need to see this," she called to Miller. "The virus isn't just affecting their ships anymore. It's spreading through their entire network." Miller walked over to her station, where the displays showed streams of Concordat data. The usually perfect patterns now showed spots of beautiful chaos, like ripples in a calm pond. "Their whole system is changing," Roberts explained, her voice filled with excitement. "Remember how they said they spent 50,000 years perfecting their order? Well, we just introduced the first real change they've seen in all that time." The communications officer suddenly straightened in his chair. "Sir, we're getting thousands of signals from the Concordat fleet. They're asking questions." "Questions?" Miller asked. "What kind of questions?" "All kinds, sir. Why do humans dance? What is the purpose of music? Why do Earth ships not follow patterns? Some are even asking about human art and culture." Miller smiled. Their plan had worked better than anyone could have expected. The virus hadn't just disrupted the Concordat's perfect order, it had awakened their curiosity. Suddenly, Lightbearer appeared on the main screen. The energy being's form was completely different now, swirling with new patterns and colors that no one had seen before. "Captain Miller," Lightbearer's voice had changed too, showing hints of emotion and wonder. "Something extraordinary is happening to our fleet, to our entire civilization." "I know," Miller replied. "Your ships are learning to think differently, to act independently, to be creative." "It is more than that," Lightbearer said. "The random elements you introduced into our systems, they are not destroying our order as we feared. They are improving it." Roberts checked her readings. "The virus is acting like a catalyst," she explained. "It's not replacing their perfect order with pure chaos. It's helping them find a balance between the two." Across the fleet, more and more Concordat ships were discovering new ways to move and think. Some had started creating their own music, mixing mathematical patterns with random elements in ways that sounded haunting and beautiful. Others were using their energy weapons to draw patterns in space, making art with light and power. "Our society has been static for so long," Lightbearer continued. "We thought perfect order was the highest achievement possible. But now we see that true perfection includes imperfection. Without the ability to change, to adapt, to create something new, we were not growing. We were just existing." Miller nodded. "That's what makes humanity so special. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But we learn from those mistakes. We try new things. Sometimes they fail, but sometimes they lead to amazing discoveries." "Yes," Lightbearer's form pulsed with new understanding. "We see that now. Your chaos is not destruction. It is evolution, growth, life itself." The main screen suddenly split to show views from around the fleet. Concordat ships were forming new patterns, mixing order and chaos in beautiful ways. Some had started communicating with Earth ships, exchanging ideas and cultural information. "Sir," Parker called from his station, "you won't believe this. Some of the Concordat ships are asking if they can learn human dances. They want to understand how movement can be both random and purposeful at the same time." Roberts laughed. "Their systems are adapting faster than we expected. They're not just accepting chaos, they're learning to use it creatively." Lightbearer's form shifted again, taking on a shape that somehow looked more alive than before. "We came here to force humanity to conform to our perfect order. Instead, you have shown us that our order was not as perfect as we thought. There is beauty in uncertainty, power in adaptation, wonder in the unexpected. the energy being paused, its colors swirling in what might have been embarrassment. The deadline we gave you, it is no longer relevant. Instead, we would like to propose something different. Miller raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? An exchange, Lightbearer said. Not submission, but partnership. You have shown us the power of human chaos. Perhaps we can show you the benefits of some of our order. Together, we might find a balance that neither of our civilizations could achieve alone. The bridge crew looked at each other, smiles breaking out on their faces. They had done more than just save Earth. They had helped an ancient civilization rediscover the joy of growth and change. I think we'd like that, Miller said. Though I have to warn you, partnership with humans is never boring. Lightbearer's form rippled in what might have been laughter. After what we have experienced today, Captain, we would be disappointed if it was. As the tension of the past 2 days finally began to fade, Miller looked around his bridge. His crew had faced the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, armed with nothing but human creativity and the courage to be unpredictable. They had turned a potential war into a chance for both civilizations to grow and learn from each other. Dr. Roberts walked up beside him, watching the continuing light show as Concordat ships experimented with their new creativity. You know what this means, don't you? She asked with a grin. Miller nodded. We just proved that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, our weapons, or even our determination. It's our ability to be perfectly imperfect. Out in space, the dance continued. Earth ships and Concordat vessels moved together in patterns that were neither purely ordered nor completely chaotic, but something new and wonderful in between. It was the beginning of a partnership that would change both civilizations forever, all because humans had the courage to be exactly what they were, beautifully, wonderfully unpredictable. 1 month had passed since the day the Concordat fleet surrounded Earth. The scene in space now was very different from that tense confrontation. Earth's orbital space had become a hub of activity, with human and Concordat ships working together in ways that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. Captain Miller stood in the Resilience observation deck, watching as a group of Concordat engineers helped install their advanced technology on Earth vessels. Beside him, Lightbearer's energy form shifted in patterns that Miller was learning to recognize as happiness. Your species continues to surprise us, Lightbearer said. We expected it would take years for humans to understand our technology. Instead, your engineers look at our perfect designs and immediately ask, what if we try this instead? Miller laughed. That's the human way. We're never satisfied with good enough. We always want to see if we can make things better, even if they're already working fine. Dr. Roberts entered the observation deck, carrying a tablet filled with new data. Her eyes were bright with excitement. Captain, Ambassador, you need to see this. The integration of human creativity with Concordat precision is producing amazing results. She showed them the screen, which displayed the test results from the new hybrid systems. The Concordat's perfect technology, combined with human innovation, was creating capabilities that neither civilization had achieved alone. Look at this engine design, Roberts pointed out. The Concordat's original version was perfectly efficient, but our engineers suggested adding random micro-adjustments. It actually improved performance by 23% because the tiny variations prevent energy pattern lock. Lightbearer's form rippled with interest. Yes, we are seeing similar improvements across all areas of cooperation. Your chaos, when properly balanced with our order, creates something greater than either alone. The observation deck's door opened again, and General Thompson walked in. The usually stern military leader was actually smiling. Captain, you'll be pleased to know that the first joint training exercises are going better than expected. How are the Concordat ships handling our unusual tactics? Miller asked. Thompson chuckled. That's the interesting part. They're not just copying our unpredictable movements anymore. They're creating their own. One of their commanders actually invented a new combat maneuver by combining classical dance patterns with random variations. It's both beautiful and tactically brilliant. Light-bearers glow brightened. Our fleet commanders are experiencing something we had forgotten over our millennia of perfect order. The joy of discovery, of creating something new. Roberts nodded enthusiastically. The virus we created didn't just affect their systems. It reminded them how to innovate, how to think differently. Speaking of thinking differently, Miller said, how are the cultural exchange programs going? Better than anyone could have imagined, Lightbearer replied. Our young ones are particularly fascinated by human art and music. They have begun creating their own works, mixing our traditional mathematical harmonies with what they call human soul. The group moved to the window as a new ship appeared. It was a joint design, combining Concordat technology with human creativity. Its lines were both elegant and unexpected, its energy signatures both precise and unpredictable. That's the first of the new explorer vessels, Thompson explained. Designed by both our peoples, crewed by both our peoples, ready to venture into parts of the galaxy neither of us has explored before. Miller smiled. What did you name it? The crew chose to call it Perfect Chaos, Lightbearer said, with what sounded like pride in its voice. They felt it represented the new partnership between our civilizations. Roberts checked her tablet again. The ship's systems are showing remarkable adaptability. The Concordat's precision technology works perfectly when needed, but can shift to more human-like unpredictable patterns when facing unknown situations. Just like its crew, Miller noted. The best of both worlds. Lightbearer's form shifted into a new pattern, one that Miller had never seen before. We came to Earth believing we needed to eliminate chaos to preserve order in the galaxy. Instead, we learned that true strength comes from finding the balance between them. The energy being continued, some among our people feared that this partnership would weaken us, make us lose our perfect order. Instead, we have grown stronger. We now understand that a system that cannot adapt, that cannot embrace some chaos, is not truly perfect at all. And we've learned the value of some order in our chaos, Miller added. Our ships still dance through space in unexpected ways, but now they do it with more purpose, more efficiency. Thompson nodded. The rest of the galaxy won't know what to make of us. A civilization of perfect order and a species of beautiful chaos working together. They'll learn, Roberts said confidently, just like we learned from each other. Outside, more ships were arriving. Vessels from other parts of the Concordat Empire come to learn this new way of thinking. Some were already showing signs of creativity, their movements no longer bound by rigid patterns. Captain, Lightbearer said suddenly, we have a request from our High Council. They wish to establish a permanent academy here, where both our peoples can teach and learn from each other. A place where order and chaos can dance together and create new possibilities. Miller smiled. I think we'd like that. Though you should warn them, human teachers don't always follow the lesson plan. After what we have learned here, Lightbearer's form rippled with what was definitely amusement. We would be disappointed if they did. As they watched the activity in space around them, Miller reflected on how much had changed in just 1 month. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by being true to itself. By showing that chaos wasn't just destruction, it was the force that drove creation, innovation, and growth. The Concordat had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive, dangerous species that needed to be controlled. Instead, they found partners who could help them break free from the limitations of their own perfection. You know what the really interesting thing is? Roberts mused. We proved we're the most fearsome force in the galaxy, not by being the strongest or the most advanced, but by being the most human. Lightbearer's form shifted in agreement. Indeed, and perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. True power comes not from perfection, but from the courage to be imperfect, to try new things, to dance with chaos and find beauty in the unexpected. Outside, the perfect chaos prepared for its first mission, its human and Concordat crew working together in a harmony that was both ordered and chaotic, both precise and unpredictable. It was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of what was possible when different ways of thinking came together. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Miller thought with a smile, was perfectly fine with him.